Yeah.
All right.
I'm curious though, can you give me a rundown on who typically like you're talking to in your podcast? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my podcast started out as the name of my podcast is Forgive Everyone for Everything Every Day Right Away. So I started
Love
out as the forgiveness coach. And there's a lot of, just kind of using mindset to, get into forgiveness and talk about forgiveness. So that's pretty broad. Certainly a lot of different people are gonna listen to that. And then it sort of like evolved into you know, learning not just to forgive, but even how to have so much like love and compassion for yourself that it was almost like you could start to look at things from such a different lens, from such a kind and compassionate lens that you're almost like there's nothing to forgive because nothing has actually gone wrong here. So
Mm,
it sort of evolved into like such a self-love journey. So you can definitely tell there's kind of like seasons of my life and what I was going through in my podcast. So it started out with the forgiveness, and then it was kind of like a heartbreak and breakup, and like learning to kind of get back in touch with yourself and find yourself again and really fall in love with yourself. And now I would describe what I'm doing now as kind of the third chapter, how to navigate, strong emotions, grief, of course, being one of those. Um, but from that place of, there's nothing here I need to forgive, and I am coming from a place of self-love. So what does it look like to lean into emotion
mm,
from that place? So who I'm talking to, kind of hard to say, like
yeah.
who finds that,
No, I
I've
totally
already
hear you.
found a few clients that, for some sort of like forgiving themselves is usually
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the way that a client would find me through the podcast.
Yeah. But it's good. No, it's good to hear your intention for it because that's really what, I want to know to like, bring the conversation, I guess, and just keep that frame in mind. And I totally hear you on it going through multiple iterations and kind of like also reflecting on where you're going. Cause I did the same thing with my podcast. I went through like 3 different transitions, all like from like health to like really mindset piece to now like spirituality. So I totally hear you.
Wonderful. Yeah. And do you find, because it's funny, I find myself being, I took breaks from my podcast too,
Yeah.
like a year-long break in between these kind of chapters. And it was so fascinating. It's like I find now that when I'm really going through something and like feeling like I'm really being stretched and squeezed and growing, that's when I want to turn to the podcast and actually use it as a way to kind of process
Mm.
going through. Do you find that with yours as well? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of an outward process.
Um, oh, sorry, I'm gonna delete that tab. No notification noises here. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it was like really a channel for my expression where
Mhm.
um I'm gonna probably get back into audio only and like throw in some video, but I think this last year I was like, I really gotta get my video up. Like I really like people need video. So I was kind of constraining myself in order to test out, like, okay, do video podcasts.
Yeah.
And I just found that it stifled my creativity because I get like these downloads all the time where I'm just like, people need to hear this, right? Or I finish a session and I'm like, I've been saying the same thing for the last like 10 sessions. Like, I need to like just do a podcast on this. And
Yeah.
so I would just get out my mic and record. And I feel like that just felt like such a natural expression of me. And that's what my podcast has always been. But then this last year, I was trying to test out like a new structure, do videos, and I did the same thing where I like have taken breaks in between. And it was really like I have taken a kind of an unintentional break from it the last like few months because I pushed myself to do a series that didn't truly like fully feel in alignment with me, but felt like what I should do with it as like a resource. And that kind of just like burnt out that creative spark, but I'm like got it back now and I'm like really excited for the format specifically that I'm gonna be like exploring.
Awesome. Yeah. And is that anything that you can share, like to tell me and whoever's listening, like what it is that you do and what you're up to?
Oh yeah, 100%. So I'm Jen Cui. I'm a soul whisperer. I'm also a certified life coach and spiritual guide, as well as a hypnotherapist. And so what I do is I help guide people into alignment with themselves, really helping them truly express their authentic self, create fulfilling lives, meaningful connections, as well as career integrity.
Mm.
So a lot of this new transition into my podcast is going to be bringing in friends to have deeper conversations with. I feel really grateful to have like really amazing friends in my life. That's been a constant. And I've worked with a lot of people who find it challenging to meet good friends, hold friendships, and find people who are in alignment with them. And also, same thing with career, finding a career that is truly like purposeful, meaningful to them, right? Having the courage to leave the job that they're in or go for what it is that they really want. And in dating, same thing, right? Like really having the courage to be yourself, to find the person who you really resonate with, not who you think you need to be with, leaving relationships that aren't aligned for you anymore, and having that trust and faith that like what you want is out there. So I find that all of it always roots back to who are you truly, and when we can really understand who is it that we are, what is our truth, what do we stand for, what do we value, then we're able to co-create with the universe, with the synchronicities of what's going to happen next, so that we can live a really fulfilling life without the fear, the uncertainty, the overwhelm, and the doubt of needing to figure it all out.
Yeah. You had me at soul whisperer. Tell
Yes.
me more. What does that? I'm sure you get this question a lot. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, I created the title of Soul Whisperer because being a life coach didn't really resonate with me anymore. Being just like a tarot reader does not resonate. Being a psychic does not resonate. And what it is helping people amplify their intuition
Mm.
and being a mirror for what is it that their soul is telling them, where is it that they're being guided to, and who are they truly, who are they at their soul level beyond a conditioning of you're a woman or you're a mom or you're a teacher or whatever, beyond what you want to be, which is like I want to be successful, or like I want to be a whatever, um, title that you are, really hitting at the soul. So for example, for me, my soul's name is Child of Wonderment,
Mm.
and it is this image of like the aurora borealis. And then for my business, it also has a spirit involved in it, and its energy is known as soul fire catalyst, right? And it's understanding that like who we are, our soul is ineffable. We can't put a name to it, we can't put a label on it, but it is a constant. And being able to come back to that constant, that home, is going to be what allows us to make decisions in our lives that are in alignment for us. And that is like, I think the fastest way to get to anywhere anyone wants to be is follow the path of integrity, follow the path of authenticity. Even though it might look slower, even though it might look like not doing all the time, it actually is the fastest way. So as the soul whisperer, it's kind of like you would go to a dog whisperer, or like, somebody compared me to a horse whisperer the other day, and that was so funny. But it's like you go to these people because it's like you can't talk to a dog,
Mhm.
right? But these people have these abilities to connect with that energy.
Yeah.
And when you really can understand what is it asking, what is it feeling, what is it wanting from you, then you can strengthen that bond and like problems get solved. So
Yeah.
it's the same way where I feel that people don't know who they are. People, or not that they don't know, they forget. They forget who they are. They forget who they like, what is it that they're truly wanting, what their purpose is. People forget what it is to like be a loving person, and we defend. We have to feel like we need to like stay safe and protect ourselves from being hurt or from failure or from being seen as a bad person. And we don't know how to make decisions. So we get into this gridlock in life where we get stuck. And so coming to me is really like looking at it from a very like safe space. What is actually being asked of you, what wants to come through you in a very neutral and grounding way, so that way your intuition can come back online and be like, oh right, yeah, it's actually a lot simpler than I thought, it's actually a lot easier than I thought. I don't need to stay stuck, I don't need to be lost, I know where I'm going. And you come back to your core so you can move forward.
So good, so good. And I resonate with that. And what was it about me sharing, the death of my partner and kind of going through the grief journey that made you want to connect?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. The reason why I connected it hits on multiple fronts. I think the first foremost was I personally I've lost a partner in the past after we had broken up, and it was a very complicated relationship, and it was probably my first experience of grief that was like so close to me, and I had no idea how to deal with it because it was so complicated. Like it wasn't a good relationship, you know.
Yeah.
And I really feel like one of the biggest things that, like, one of the biggest gifts that we have in this life is to love deeply, is to find people and like to spend time with the loved ones. And the thought of just like losing the people who are close to you just feels very painful. And so um that being said, I think there's that aspect of I really believe in the power of spirituality, of this energy, and connecting to this energy that's within us that connects all of us. And grief is one of those things that feels like it's hard to touch sometimes. And I feel very comfortable in the darkness. I feel very comfortable in like the depths of life in which maybe people are afraid to touch. And so I feel like I can help support and meet people where they're at in that depth without getting lost in the depth.
Okay.
Yeah. So that being said, the tool, the concept, the perspective that I wanted to share on it, I can go into if we want to go into it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I want to hear it.
Okay. Well, I also am curious for you, like, you going through this and also speaking to multiple people about grief and like learning about grief, what have you found helpful, unhelpful, questions that are maybe like unanswered, anything like that?
I'm not sure if I have like unanswered questions. The thing that's coming up for me that I want to share with you just after hearing what you said is, not only do I miss the person that I love so deeply, but I also notice, which I find very fascinating, because whenever I look at pictures of us, my eyes, of course I look at him, but then I look at me. And it's like, I notice not only do I miss him, but I miss her, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Oh, 100%.
Right. But I experienced with him so much love and so much depth and so much connection. It's like with that gone, she's gone. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I totally hear you on that. And that's exactly, I'm so glad you bring this up, because that brings up the question, is that like really true? Like that version of you that existed,
Yeah.
which is the beyond the vision of it, right? Beyond the what it looked like at the time, but the feeling that you had, right? The feeling of being loved so deeply, feeling so seen, feeling so safe and secure and supported, right? Like all of those feelings, is that gone?
Yeah. I mean, my coach brain
Yeah.
is going to tell you, of course, what I think the right answer to that is,
Which is like,
which is, well, no, of course, I created all
right,
that
right,
to
right.
begin with. I
Right.
created that feeling of safety and security and connection.
Yeah.
But I think there's also, again, like an energetic exchange between two individuals that cannot be created alone.
Yes. I fully agree.
Okay. Yeah. So the version of me, yes, there are still like, I'm still me.
Yeah.
Still me. I'm still, safe and loved and worthy and valuable and all of that. But the parts of me that came alive when I was with him, I recognize, okay, yes, that came alive when I was with him. So it means like it's there. I understand that it's there, but I feel like now without him, it's now gone dormant again. Yeah. So it's not like it was never there. It's not like he created being with him. It was like, oh, he woke it up inside of me. And now that he's gone, it's gone dormant again, which I think is why, like, and so I also recognize, like, okay, I do understand that when I'm ready someday, I could go out into the world and create another connection with another human being where that, you know, is
that part gets activated
again. Yes. But yeah, it's definitely a weird feeling. Yeah. To have that go dormant again and to look at pictures and to miss it. It's like I'm not just grieving his death, but I'm grieving the loss of that as well, me, the version of me that was with him.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that makes sense. I think one thing with feelings in general is like, feelings aren't a problem, right? Like, and I think one of the challenges that people come across is, how do I live my life even when I'm feeling like all these feelings, right? Because feelings are a signal. Feelings is one of the ways that our souls speak to us, in my opinion, right? I think it speaks through intuition, it speaks through desire, it speaks through feelings. And the feeling is not a problem. What I think creates challenges is if the message of the feeling is not getting, not being seen and heard. That's where we start to see problems start to happen. And that's where we start to see symptoms of an unfelt feeling or a stuck energy, a soul being suppressed, or in your case, it sounds like your light being dormant, right?
Yeah.
And if the desire is to feel more activated, like activate that part of you. If the desire is, I want to live fully, I want to live freely, I want to feel happy, right? Then that is what we want to look at as far as how to actually go about solving the quote problem, right? Because the problem is not the grief. And grief naturally, like, it's like that image of if grief is the size of a baseball, and like it first, like they first are experiencing that grief, it feels like it's taking up your whole world, right? But as your life gets bigger, the grief like stays the same, right? It doesn't go away, but your life gets so much bigger, and you're like, oh, you're fine, right? And I think about this the same way as, when you're a kid and you didn't get the ice cream flavor that you wanted, and you throw a temper tantrum, it feels like the world is ending. Oh my God. And then now you look back and you're like, oh my God, I have so many other problems that are so much bigger. That's like a non-problem. That's just like, that's life, right? It's so neutral. It's so not charged in that way. So I don't think a lot of the feelings that we go through, like including grief, is something that necessarily needs to be dealt with. It just needs to be like allowed to be there. And then we focus on what we actually need to focus on, which is, I want to feel more alive in my life, right? Or I want to feel safe again in my life. I want to have more trust, right? I want to be more open, like whatever it may be. And that's what we go to work in creating. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And the word that comes to mind when I hear you saying, like, I want to have more fill in the blank, for me, it would be joy. Joy to me isn't like, woo, it's not super activated. It's not super expressive.
Yeah.
It's more peaceful.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that being in the present.
Yeah.
And then really like absorbing everything that is around you, that appreciation.
Yeah.
It's like this contentment.
Yeah.
It's like all these feelings that build up into joy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I share with you? Can I draw? Is that
Please? Yes.
Cool. Okay. We're going to draw a diagram. So if anybody's just listening and not watching, they're going to want to watch this.
Yeah.
So this comes down to my core life philosophy and how I coach in general, how I see things, especially as the soul whisperer, right? a lot of times if you want to feel joy, right, we look at the vision of what joy looks like, right? So it's a vision of joy. Like when you think of being joyful, what does that look like to you?
Mm. Present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can like be in the moment, where I can be present in a conversation. I'm not, thinking about something else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing things, I'm noticing the sky, the trees, the smells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like all the senses of that you have are like activated in this.
Mm, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And appreciating them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the sky is dark, even if it's gray, even it's still, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So um the fun thing with this is the way that we typically go about things is like we want to like what it looks like first, and then we try to like work our way to it, right? So then we try to find, okay, well, what do we value in our life, right? Maybe it's like because I know a little bit about you. I'm sure like relationships are part of that,
Yes.
right? What else do you value?
Mm, I value like stillness,
Mm-hmm.
being in
Yeah.
nature,
Nature. Yeah.
respecting nature. I
Mm-hmm.
value that a lot. Um,
What are like some priorities that you have in your life right now?
mm, I have teenagers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being a mother.
Yes. Yeah. And then I also have furry children. So
Yes.
being a good, a good a steward to my animals.
Mm-hmm.
I value being a good steward of my finances.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I value, I mean, this kind of goes under the relationship umbrella, but I value, if there's any ever anything that I've learned that helps me, I very much value being the kind of person that shares that,
Yes.
so others can benefit of it if they choose.
Yeah. Sounds like service.
Yeah.
That's gonna be what I put down. Okay. I'm also gonna use a different color for this piece. So it looks a little different. Okay. So what we're missing in this piece, right? If we're looking at, okay, I want to be present, and the present looks like being out in nature and really like just like smelling all the smells, looking at the sky, in conversation, being able to just be in the moment and you're seeing yourself in that, right? That's a really helpful way to conceptualize, okay, that's maybe what it will come through as. But and knowing what your priorities are in your life, also great because it gives you um kind of like a way to express yourself, right? But what we're still missing here is like, who are you, right?
Mm,
Who are you to your core, that
mm,
soul piece of
mm,
you, right? And so that's where the virtues come in, or soul essence. And this is kind of the missing piece that I see a lot
mhm,
of when we're trying to go about and solve problems or find our like center again. We're like, but how? And this one's really interesting because it's not like you're coming at this from a place of I want like a specific relationship,
mhm,
right? Which is what a lot of people will come to this with, or like looking perfectly healed, right? In a way, that could be this like perfectionist way of looking at like joy is like you're like fully present in the moment all the time with everyone in every situation. Nothing ever breaks your peace. It's like this very like Buddha nature type thing, right? Which is
mhm.
cool and all, but it might not be that way, right? And just
Not
because it's not that way all the time doesn't necessarily mean that you're not in this, you're that joy part of you is now dim, right?
okay.
So instead, if we flip this on its head and we stick with the virtues first, this is going to be things like love, humanity, right? Presence, joy can be a part of your virtues, but it's going to look different from like a vision of like what it looks like.
Okay.
Because now we're going to tap into like how does it really feel, and like how does it feel authentically to you.
Mm.
So can you remember the last time you felt joy? Okay.
Yeah.
How was that in your mind, in your body, in your soul?
It's calm, it's peaceful, it's like a stillness, a knowing.
Mm.
It feels safe. It felt I remember not being able to stop smiling
Mm.
and feeling like this, there was just this aliveness in my center, like in my core, that felt, oh God, I don't even know how to explain it. It was such a strong and new like energy to me in my gut. It wasn't butterflies. It wasn't, I don't even know how to explain it. It was I guess it would be similar to what somebody might describe as butterflies, but I think of butterflies as more of like a nervous kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
As this,
Mm-hmm.
what I, if I had to describe pure joy, that's what it felt like in my
Yeah.
tummy.
The visual that came up for me was like a blooming flower, like
Okay.
a
Yeah.
flowering.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Mhm.
So if you were to give that feeling a face, like an animal avatar, if there was like a scene that could encapsulate that, what would it be?
Hmm. I don't see like necessarily like a face or an animal. It's
Mm.
more like maybe electricity.
Yeah.
Uh, like I don't necessarily want to say like bolts of lightning because it's not like a
Yeah.
storm associated with a storm. It it's hard, but it feels, it's like hands
Mm-hmm.
um buzzing. Hmm. I guess it actually even, and maybe it's just because I talked about butterflies, but again, not in the nervous way, but it's almost
Yeah.
like I can envision, when they're all like kind of in a group and then they
Yes.
they something happens and they all decide to just let go and fly away at once.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Okay. Okay. I love it. I love it. I'm like, how are we going to put this into a word? How are like into a group of words? Mm, so we got butterflies.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's almost sensual
Yes.
in a way too.
Yes. Yes.
Um, mm,
Yeah. Sensual, butterflies. I'm like expanding,
yeah.
letting go, hmm. Being released.
Mm,
Mm,
yeah. And you know what's super fascinating as I think back on that sensation and the
yeah.
times that I felt that sensation. It was so delicious and it was so
Yeah.
fun and so beautiful. And yet I only had a certain tolerance for it.
Mm-hmm.
which is really, which I always found really interesting. Like I felt like I would open myself up to it a little bit more and a little bit more, but then it was like, no, 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 that feels too good. I
Yes.
can remember almost being like, no, no, that's all I can
Yes.
handle
Yeah.
of this joy, of this joyous feeling.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
it's like, it was almost like too intense at times.
Yes.
Shut it down.
Yes. Okay. So you obviously, as a coach brain, right? Your coach brain's probably already like, well, why? Right? Like there's this cap on it. Now, intuitively, the image that I get is you have these butterflies that are in this group that's like living within you, living within your solar plexus, probably, which is that center of like, this is where your life force energy lives. This is where your confidence lives. And then below that, we have your sacral, right? So it's like hugged by your sacral, which is your creative energy, your that vitality, sexual energy. And then it's also hugged by your heart chakra, which is all about joy and love and that open-hearted living, right? So we have like the above and the below. And it's funny because it's almost like when I was a personal trainer, we would talk about the kinetic chain, right? Where your hip is connected to your leg or your thigh, right? Your quad, and then that's connected to your knee, that's just connected down. And if you were to be having like knee pain, it might not actually be the knee that's the problem. It could be like you have a tight hip, right?
Yeah.
Or like low back problems. So
Yeah.
it's like we got to look at what's going around, and then that might actually be the cause. And so for you, it's there's the sacral, there's the heart, and then there's the solar plexus. And if you were to imagine like the butterflies living there, right, and it wanting to be released, right, that life force energy wanting to be released, the heart opening, the joy, the confidence opening and being released, it's like a jar lid's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Started, and then it's like, no, not all of them, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it just gets suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a protective, like, don't let it all go. Don't let it all go, right? That's the image that I get from it. Now, for lack of a specific term, which is something that you can play with, and I would invite you to play with, we're going to call these sensual buzzing butterflies. Okay. That's going to be that soul essence. That's going to be this virtue. And we're going to have presence, right? Or love or joy. You could put that as a virtue. Again, I'm going to be a little bit more stickler on this. We're going to put presence as the virtue here because this is really like you being you, right? Now, the values here, you're going to have the same values, right? The money, the service, the being a mother, being out in nature, your relationships in your life, all these things. So this is where we want to express your true self, these sensual buzzing butterflies, through service, money, being a mother, nature, relationships, right? It's going to expand outward like this. Does that make sense so far?
I think so. Yeah.
How is this feeling?
Yeah. I'm just more like, okay, where is this going? Like,
okay. Yeah. So where this goes next is the vision. So this is going to be the piece of life itself, the universe, synchronicities. So for me, for example, one thing that brings me joy is like the little thing of there's a hummingbird. Like this happened yesterday. I was like sitting on my deck talking to a good friend of mine, and a hummingbird just like flies by. It's kind of like floating right behind his head, and then like goes off and into like one of my plants and is like hanging out there. I'm like, oh, like there's this hummingbird. That to me feels very joyful. That to me is like the moment of happiness of like, oh my God, right? And there's that is, I'm not in control. I'm not looking for hummingbirds. But for me, like I've established, like for me, something that I find meaningful in life is looking for, or is being open to, these little moments and like things having meaning to them. Things like butterflies and hummingbirds or dragonflies. Those are like signs to me, right? Or angel numbers. These are like little things that bring me joy, just as much as finding like a vegan pastry, like just randomly, right? When I'm walking around in a cafe, I'm like, oh my God, vegan pastry, I'm vegan. Yes, joy, right? Part
Yeah.
of me gets activated in that way, but
Okay.
I'm not necessarily having to look for it,
Okay. Okay.
right? So just like this, like if you're looking, like if you go back to this model of the visions first, then the values and the virtues, and you try to solve for joy,
Mm,
try to solve for a feeling, you might not be centered in who it is that you are anymore, right? Versus knowing that these central buzzing butterflies is part of your soul, is part of your spirit. This lives within you. Then presence is this virtue of yours that like you want to, that it's just like natural to you, and keep coming back home to center of this, like coming back to this is you. You allow that to guide you through money, for example, like in your business. What is like central buzzing butterflies like want to do here, right? Where is it being guiding you? Like maybe it wants to guide you to read a specific book. Maybe it wants you to close down this offer because it feels like putting a jar on, like putting a lid on the jar, right? Maybe there's something that has been like living within you that you're like, this would be super cool to do, like the podcast idea that you're like, okay, gotta let the butterflies out, right? And same thing in service, in your relationships, and being a mother and being in nature. It's like you don't need to force yourself to go out in nature and sit down and be like, okay, my intention here is to be present. It's you already like these central buzzing butterflies is your guide.
mm,
This is your compass that's like pointing you already in the direction, right? Sometimes people will talk about spirit guides or the voice of God or like whatever it may be.
yeah.
This can be your version of that, right?
Mm,
This is you within you. And when you remember what are your priorities right now, right, that allows you to find joy in however it comes through. Finding joy now doesn't look like you have to be sitting outside and like living in nature or whatever, right? And part
yeah,
of
force
presence,
it.
yeah, part of presence is being present even in the uncomfortable times, in the challenging times, in a difficult conversation, in the grief,
Yeah.
right? But now joy is not like in this limited or in a limitation of the feel good Buddha nature.
Mm,
It's just through life. And you can be, I don't know, super deep in writing copy or writing an email and feeling flustered or frustrated or whatever. And all of a sudden see a hummingbird go by your window. And you're like, oh, joy, right? It's like you allow it to be in your life however it wants to be in your life, but you don't need to focus on it.
okay. It's interesting because as I described this feeling to you, it was kind of a new feeling for me, the energetic
Mm-hmm.
butterflies.
Yes.
And I associate that feeling with him. I
Mm.
don't necessarily, I haven't like associated it with me, like
Yes.
just me, if that makes sense. But
Yes.
as you're talking, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There may be another thing that I have become very aware of, as far as like when I feel like something, again, without searching for it, without, trying to force it to happen, whenever I'm either doing something or talking about something and it feels like so in alignment and so authentic, I get like a rush of energy and
Mm.
like kind of goosies and like hairs stand up on my arms, or somewhere I feel like an energy
Yes.
about me. And I've just recently in the last few months become aware of that.
Yes.
Happens now. I'm like, ooh, like
Yeah.
something important, like pay attention. That was like something important that I just said or acknowledged or realized. But
Yeah.
this butterfly feeling, I loved it so much. I do notice I want more of it. And I'm noticing even now as talking about it, I'm like, I don't have any idea how to access it without him.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that you're bringing this up because
Hmm.
that's such a great piece of awareness
Yeah.
where you had mentioned first holding back, right? You felt it and you're like, ooh, not safe to feel all of that. That's a lot.
Mm.
And now we're seeing also another piece of this is attached to this person. And we could do like hypnotherapy to go back to see like, okay, is there like some type of belief where this is tied to like it's only safe to feel this feeling with this person, right?
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
even in childhood of like it's only safe to feel joy if XYZ is met, right? Like there's all these like subconscious reasons of why we might like suppress our joy or why we can't access it or whatever. But from this, we can go down this bridge now of this pragmatic lens of, okay, it was so easily activated by your past partner. You're experiencing this grief to a degree still, right?
Yeah.
And the confusion is that grief and joy, this like sensual buzzing butterflies, is being what's the word I'm looking for? Compacted. Like it's getting almost like confused.
Mm.
Like they're like associated with each other now instead of seeing it separately.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That resonates. Yeah.
However, we can use joy here, but I think a lot of this is these are two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of choosing which side we want to look at it from. Like we always hear how like grief is like the other side of love, right? How much you grieve somebody is a reflection of how much you love them, right? And so it's like just another reminder of how much you love them and, you know, embrace the grief. That's just love. You don't have to transmute it, but it's to understand that that's the other part of love. I see a lot of like people who experience like guilt from experiencing joy if they're grieving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's a narrative of like is it a like you're letting go of the person and you're like forgetting the person or you're it's like bad to feel joy because it dishonors them in some way or disrespects that memories, you know, feeling
Yeah,
bad.
and I've definitely had those thoughts, but
Yeah.
like immediately I've been able to be like, I know that that's not true. And I've been
Yes.
able to like coach myself through
Yes.
those thoughts so I don't get lost in them or stuck in them. I'm very aware of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. So when you've been able to do that, what happens next?
Yeah. I mean, I think cognitively, I do understand, like,
Yes.
no, of course I can still experience joy.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I don't love him. It doesn't mean that I'm not sad that he's gone. It doesn't mean that I don't miss him. And you know, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I have, you know, experienced joy, you know, especially now that you're, you know, when you talk about just like seeing a hummingbird, even just like laughing with my kid at the grocery store the other day, you know,
Yeah.
my son and I, he's 15, and we went to the store and it was the first time that I was at the store that I could actually be present, you know, and just goof off and laugh with him again the way that we used to and not think about, you know, my partner and the death and all of that. So, and I don't feel guilty for that. I understand, like, it doesn't mean I'm forgetting him. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean we're no longer connected in that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you said, it's just that it's expanding,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's still there, but
Yeah.
I've expanded a little bit out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? Like cognitively, you can know that you can have joy and that doesn't take away anything from the heartbreak or like how much you love somebody,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There is that like neutralization, I think that happens of um every time you think about that person, it's going to be very loving, but it's not your core anymore. Like your present day does not include seeing your past partner.
Right.
And it's like when we move from this first model to this model, it's a letting go of what it looks like,
Mhm.
right? Like life is just looks different now.
Yeah.
They're not a part of it, and you can't plan to have them as part of it.
Right.
So there's this joy piece where um when you're talking about like being at the market and just laughing with your kid and just having that fun and that joy coming alive, and it and what we had mentioned of like, okay, you're not feeling that grief anymore, but are you putting yourself in the situation in which you're creating enough evidence essentially that it's safe and it's good to feel this joy,
Yeah.
right? Because cognitively, it can be like, okay, I'm not stopping myself or I'm not judging it anymore that I'm feeling it. But then does that mean that the feeling continues? Right? Like, are we actually like creating more of it? Are we actually feeling more of it? Are we being that present self through it? Does that make sense?
I think so. And I notice, and I think this would be true even before he died. I'm more comfortable in sort of maybe like the lower vibe emotions. Like I'm
Mm,
more comfortable in sadness
yeah.
versus kind of silliness and flirtiness
Yes.
and laughter and joy,
Yes.
even though like I love those and those feel so good and yeah, it's like also uncomfortable, which is weird because it does feel better,
Yeah.
but it's very easy to just like drop back into hmm, joy or sadness or apathy.
Yeah.
Even I would
Yeah.
say that's my probably most comfortable
Yeah.
emotion. It's just apathy, whatever.
Yeah. Is that a problem?
I think it can be a problem uh, in that it feels disconnecting,
Mm.
right?
Is
Like
there
like
value in it?
stop caring
Yeah.
about self, people, places, things. Yeah, that's when
Yeah.
I think it becomes a problem.
Is there value in it?
In the apathy?
Yes.
Mm. My answer to that would be, I suppose it does give me, I don't know, does it give me a break? Does it have like a purpose in that, okay, you can't, necessarily be in joy all the time or
Yeah.
sadness all the time or
Yeah.
whatever all the time. So the apathy is just maybe the reset period,
Yeah.
which I'd never thought of it that way before. I just said it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Resting period.
yeah. I
Hmm.
really like to come from a perspective that really there's nothing wrong with anybody. Like wherever you're at, there's nothing wrong with you. What grinds my gears is if someone's not fulfilling their potential,
Mhm.
right? And there can be things that get in the way of that where we get stuck, we get lost, we get overwhelmed, we feel not in control, we feel purposeless, and et cetera, et cetera. And maybe there's addictions, maybe there's whatever, right? Trauma that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's never that the person is the problem.
Mhm.
And and in that line, right, where we talk about emotions as part of the soul, it's one of the ways it expresses through you. No emotion is wrong. No emotion is a problem. So, because when I hear you say that like apathy is a baseline, and you kind of return back to baseline, that is like saying your homeostasis, right, is 98.7 degrees. And if you were to go above that, you have a fever. So if you're like in extreme joy, it's like having a fever. And if you're in extreme sadness, it's like having, I don't know, going to hypothermia and like being in this survival state,
Mm.
right? And homeostasis is just apathy. And we're meant to be in homeostasis. So presence, right, as a virtue instead of joy makes sense to be as like a baseline to be in,
Mhm.
that awareness, just the awareness of self, the awareness of what you're experiencing, and to be able to see it from a neutral perspective. Because the reaction is, oh no, I feel apathy. I shouldn't feel this way. This can be become a problem. Even if it's not a problem, it could become a problem. And therefore, maybe I should try to get out of apathy
Okay.
versus just seeing it as this is homeostasis. This is,
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
know,
I can feel the like, oh, I could feel myself judging apathy.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like you said, there could be value to it, right? And I've definitely seen this in hypnotherapy of we hold on to painful stories. We hold on to these feelings because it doesn't feel safe to let them go.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel safe. There's some type of reason. It's a protection mechanism. We feel like we're trying to like punish ourselves in some way. There's all these subconscious reasons in which we might be holding on to our baseline being a specific thought, a specific limiting thought of like, I'm not worthy or I'm not lovable, or it's even a specific feeling of like melancholy and apathy.
Yeah.
But if we make it not a problem,
Mm-hmm.
if this is just an acceptance of how we're being expressed right now, then we can get curious, right? Because, like you said, if apathy, the next time you feel apathetic, you get curious and you have a conversation with apathy, just like you would have a conversation with essential buzzing butterflies of like, okay, like, what is this trying to tell me?
Yeah.
What is the message that it has here for you? Then it might be, yeah, I'm like hitting compassion burnout, compassion fatigue. I care so much and I've cared so much and I've tried so much and I'm just fucking tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it makes sense, right?
It does. Yeah.
What's coming up for you?
Yeah. Just like sitting in that, just sitting in because yeah, if I had answered that question, I would have said the same thing. I'm just tired. And that does make sense. And then I can see how, and I don't even think it's been conscious,
Mm-hmm.
how somewhere in the background, I'm like, but you can't stay here, you
Yes.
gotta do, yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of dual awareness?
I mean, I think I know what that is, but
Yeah.
explain it in the way, yeah. I've
Yeah.
never heard the actual term.
Yeah. I'm sure you know it. I'm sure you know it and you felt it. And like everyone experiences it. It's
Mhm.
just, it might even be called, people might refer to it different things, but in psychology, we call it dual awareness. And even in mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
And dual awareness really comes about when you have this ability to be conscious being aware of your thoughts, aware of your feelings, aware of where your body is in time and space, just being aware, right? And when you have this awareness, the dual awareness can be, I myself right now feel apathetic. And also, I'm an extremely purpose driven person and I love people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can be apathetic and also still know that happiness exists. I can have life ending thoughts and still think that life is extremely valuable.
Okay. I would say I have a lot of dual awareness then.
Yes. Yeah.
You
And
just
like,
described my brain. That's
yes.
exactly what my brain does all the time.
Yes. So the great thing about dual awareness is that one, it's a skill. So if anyone's listening and is like, I'm just angry and I'm angry and I don't know why I'm angry. And like, I feel like I need to do something with the anger, right? This is where things like mindfulness comes in, like breathing and thought awareness, and where coaching can help because it creates space between the reaction of how you're feeling, what you're feeling in this like physical body, which is limited, and then what is actually also going on soulfully in this like fifth dimension, sixth dimension level of like, what are you feeling? What is everything else around you? That space between the stimuli and the reaction, right? Which allows you to then respond intentionally to what's going on. So then the anger is not just anger. It's like, okay, wait, let me like take a breath and figure out what is this anger telling me? What is it that it's like needing? Why was this triggered? Right.
Mhm.
And like knowing like I'm not an angry person. I don't need to like, it's like people who are like, well, I'm this way because my parents were this way. Like, cool, you're an adult. You literally just told me you have awareness that you have this pattern because your parents did it, but you're not your parents. Therefore, you have choice.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have the ability to be intentional, and you're just letting the story play out, right? But the dual awareness piece is when I'm angry and I know that I have this anger because my parents used to act this way, and also I'm a separate human being and I don't believe in expressing anger in this way, it allows you to step into the intentional piece.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So the dual awareness in this is really important because, again, it comes back to there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with how you feel, what you're thinking, what you're doing. If everything was actually neutral, then we get to approach it with curiosity of how do I want to do this? Right?
Yeah.
How do I, like, it comes back to how do I want to be myself? How do I be myself authentically? Right? So the dual awareness in this with like the apathy, yes, you're feeling apathy. You are not apathy itself. It's just how it's being, how you're expressing yourself. Right? So then maybe it looks like numbing out and watching Netflix for an hour. Right? Maybe it looks like, okay, I'm feeling apathetic, but I'm still going to show up for my kids and make dinner. Right? And when it comes to feelings, we don't have to necessarily like change the feeling. That's one approach we can go especially if we're feeling like a feeling that's uncomfortable to the point where we don't feel like we can deal with it alone. That's where, okay, maybe we want to go and like talk to somebody, right? We want someone to like change our situation. So that is one way to deal with the emotion, is you can change the emotion. You can also allow the emotion too. You can like let it just ride out, right? Like it will change naturally.
Yeah.
You're pissed off at your boss right now. You're feeling grief right now because like, you just lost somebody. Like it will take time. Like just let time do its thing and don't make yourself wrong in that process of it. And like you'll see that things will like move, right?
Yeah.
Things will just move.
Okay. So I think I've been judging my apathy as like, this is, quote unquote bad because it means I'm not feeling.
Yes.
So it's like, so I think I've been using it as like, no, I'm using the apathy as a way to not feel.
Yeah. Okay, great. Dual awareness too, right? Apathy, feeling apathetic, it's like avoidance. And then it's like, well, what are you avoiding? Right? And you can have the awareness of what you're avoiding and choose still to avoid it, but then at least you know.
Yeah. And so I do recognize that I avoid, so I can avoid anger. I notice I can do that. I can avoid extreme sadness. I can go to a certain level of sadness and have a nice cry and all of that, but I avoid extreme sadness, like anguish, maybe I would call it. And then I also avoid extreme joy, somewhere on that other spectrum. And so it is interesting because I do want to be someone who opens up to experiencing, I think about, if here's neutral in the middle and over here is on this side is maybe the apathy or the anger, and on this side is the joy and maybe excitement. I've got comfort level right here on both sides. And I want to, I think kind of going back to what you were saying in the beginning, I want to continue to expand that and expand that, because I believe in expanding that, I will become more of who I am.
Yes.
Meant to be. I will fulfill my purpose. I will become more love.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, but I'm like, this is my safe space right here in the middle. And yeah, I'm not sure how to expand. I just come back, to that middle place.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. This is also good. So I
What
get
did you
really
write? Temperature?
temperance.
Temperance.
Temperance is a virtue. it can be broken down into characteristics like prudence, self-control,
Okay.
right? And what you're talking about right now of not wanting to go too extreme is your virtue of temperance coming up, right? Because you're not your true self if you're on one end where you are reckless, and then you're also not your true self on another end if you are like self-suppressing, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like overly careful, overly prudent, right? So this kind of comes down into, okay, like if we all have a baseline, and this has been shown in studies, right, where like in happiness studies, for example, where we all have a baseline happiness, and that just is like what we always come back to, right?
Yeah.
And we can see this for ourselves. So if the effort, if the intention is to move the baseline, then we have to understand where we have to move our baseline of like temperance, right? If something felt reckless, right, and we're trying to expand our temperance, and we're somebody who maybe feels like we want to create more joy. You want to create more joy, and what be really reckless is to buy a flight to Germany tomorrow because you just want to go, right? And that's so irresponsible. You're just blah 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 blah, right? It's like way too much, right?
Yeah.
But there's a desire to move the energy. Then we gotta find what is in between, like what feels like responsible right now and what feels reckless.
Okay.
Right. And then we also have the other side of like prudent. I'm pretty sure I'm using this word right. Right. Where I'll use dating as an example because I just work with a lot of dating things.
Yeah.
And what felt prudent is like wait 3 months to have sex with somebody because you're just like, you need to make sure like intentionally this is like the one or something like that. It has to be super serious. And being reckless is like just sleep with whoever you want to feel it, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to find that balance, right? And right now it's just like it feels like you're Virgin Mary because you're suppressing your sexual desire so much, and like you feel like you don't want to like share that pleasure, but you also like want that, right? You gotta find a balance between what feels prudent and what feels like there too, right? And you're gonna move that baseline over. So but here it's kind of deciding like where do you want to take it? Where do you want to move your baseline? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
So with that joy and what feels safe to feel joy now, what feels like a stretch? Because I'm gonna say we're going down this road where it might feel like irresponsible.
It feels like a stretch. Yeah. Well, there is a particular, I mean, since you mentioned travel, there is a particular thing that I have been wanting to do for years that I have the opportunity to do now. And I do feel myself holding back because of, kind of the sadness, like, oh, I don't want to do it without him.
Yes.
Kind of a thing. Whereas, I mean, I wanted to go on this trip before I even met him.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's fascinating to kind of think about that. But doing it now, like I do check the site and I'm waiting for them to open up the dates for the expedition, and they haven't yet. And I'm telling myself that when they do, I want to do it, but it does feel like a stretch because I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm afraid, even though it's like this time next year, it would be the actual trip. I'm afraid that it won't be fun. Though it's like a dream, a lifelong dream of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Fear.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
If I go on this trip without my partner, it's not gonna be fun.
Yeah. I'm just gonna be sad the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even saying that out loud, I'm like, really, Sarah? I mean, I want to free dive in the Arctic Circle with orca.
Yeah.
Even say, I just got goosebumps saying it out loud, which is always like my
Yeah.
sign, right? And I'm like, really, Sarah? Yeah, you're gonna miss him. You're gonna think about him when you're there. But when you're in that water
Yeah.
and an orca swims by you,
Yeah.
babe, you are gonna be overcome with who knows, like probably
Yeah.
emotion I've never even experienced before.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You are going to be so in your body, you have no choice but to be present.
Yeah. Right? I mean, what a place to put yourself to have to be present.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Cool.
truly think presence
Wow.
is like such key to everything. And like
Hmm.
being present requires you being in your body. And I think grief, a little maybe controversial, but truly, I think grief is it creates a lot of discomfort because we treat it like it's a mental experience
Mhm.
versus body experience. If
Yeah.
we actually let ourselves be in our body through grief, it would pass so much faster.
Yeah.
But it's become such a mental experience to
Mhm.
mentally experience grief.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
the mental side of it. And I contemplate that like,
Yeah.
wow, or
Yeah.
I see the ways that people do suffer, like
Yeah.
in the guilt or the
Yes.
all of that. I can see that. I can see my brain offering me those things. I don't entertain them, but I can
Yes.
see like what a mental thing it can be.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
then the key, right, is be in the body.
Yeah.
The body has the answers. The body holds everything. The body is what is the gateway to experience everything we want to experience.
Yeah. And I think
It's
that's
the
why,
body.
like, I'm here. Like, that's why
Yeah.
I wanted to do this
Yeah.
experiment, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I don't need to be in my head. This isn't
Yeah.
about what's going on in my mind.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is about what's going on in my body.
Yes. Yes. And now that you have the body's desires and like the feelings of joy, right? And it's guiding you in this direction,
Yeah.
then the work is now you're solving for getting your brain on board,
Okay. That
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
It's like the body decides. If the
Mhm.
body is like, I'm hungry, the brain's gonna want to be like, well, what do you want to eat? Blah, 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 right? And so the brain is a problem solving tool. It's a
Mhm.
tool. That's it. But the body's the thing that gives you the answers or like gives you the guiding light. Your soul's like, okay, let's go to this expedition. So now it's like, all right, brain, get on board.
Yeah. And would you say that most people are kind of doing that opposite?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out what is my purpose,
Yeah.
right? We're like, what is my purpose?
Yeah. And
What
that's
does your
all
perfect
up here.
person look like? You know? And then it's just like we get stuck. We get stuck in the overthinking and the confusion and the overwhelm. And then when we're on a date, we're like, but do they check these boxes instead of like, dude, what you want to do is feel connected.
Yeah.
And you can only feel connected if you're present.
Mhm.
So you gotta be in your body. And that's where it comes back to the virtue again.
Mm.
You gotta come back to the feeling. You gotta come back to your true self. And then you gotta act accordingly. You gotta be in integrity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You
how
got
would you I know. How would
it.
you sum up like our time together today and how like for me to sort of go forward and kind of integrate what we talked about today?
Mm. I think I want to sit with that for a minute. The first thought that I have is there's like an overarching bringing joy back.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like a returning home to joy. Yeah. And I think that resonates from this perspective of joy has in this process of you in this relationship has moved outside of you to a degree where it's not within you as like it's not rooted in home. It's like a place that you go almost. Like I go to a cafe to go experience joy. It's like I go to my person and these memories of my person to experience this thing.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing and remembering that the joy lives within you.
Okay.
Right? The joy, the love, all that stuff does live within you. And you intellectually already know all this stuff. So it's not a problem of like you not knowing. But now it's building the muscle, building the practice, building the body of evidence in which how it's true that you are this joy, that you are these buzzing sensual butterflies. And it's a coming home to recalibrating, like, yes, this feels like me, and this is all, like, this is me.
Okay. Oh my gosh, Jen, I could talk to you all day. It is so good. Tell people, oh my gosh, I have no doubt that people are going to hear this and hear you and be like, what? Tell me more. I need to know more. How do they find out more? How do you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, people can find me on my website at jencui.com. That's JENCUI.com. On Instagram, I'm Jen the Soul Whisperer. So JEN the Soul Whisperer. I have a podcast called the Soul Whispers Podcast. It has 107 episodes. So if people want to experience that, they can. And I have I'm glad that we're talking about joy in this and the conversation of grief too, because I have a free hypnosis audio that people can listen to that is intended to help you create internal safety, confidence, and daily happiness.
Nice.
So it's a great resource where you can just turn it on before you go to bed, first thing you wake up, and get that subconscious part of you on board to make it a lot easier to feel safe, to experience joy, happiness, and confidence.
Okay. Awesome. And I will put that resource and that link and everything that you just said. I'll put that in the notes so people don't have to go search for that.
Yes.
Jen, thank you so much for seeing my post and reaching out and being willing to support me. The support has been overwhelming, and I can't tell you how grateful I am.
I'm so glad.
And I will definitely this one I'm going to be thinking about for sure.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to see how it integrates going forward. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, I will definitely be staying in touch and hearing how this goes. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, honey. Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.